Good morning, Toronto. I am currently at Guns Loop, the terminus of the 512 St. Clair, as you can see right here. It is located at the intersection of St. Clair Avenue West, Old Stockyards Road, and Guns Road. It's a modest yet somehow historic terminus carrying over a century of Toronto's transit evolution. And before you ask, no, Guns Loop is not named after the good old bullet firing machine, though given how long the St. Clair renovations took last year, you might as well say it did. Transit in the Guns Loop area began long before the loop itself existed. In 1892, the Davenport Street Railway Company was the first to operate the streetcars nearby. Their line started at Keele on Dundas, and then, of course, being named the Davenport streetcar, and went to St. Clair Avenue West, then curved down into Davenport Road, terminating at Bathurst Street. The route didn't reach Guns yet, but it laid the groundwork for the corridor. By January 1894, the DSR merged the City and Suburban Electric Railway Company to form the Toronto Suburban Railway Company. Just a year later, in 1895, the TSR would open its first Western interurban line, running to past what would later become Guns Loop. Streetcar expansion along St. Clair Avenue itself began in 1911, after years of gridlock between the privately run Toronto Railway Company, aka the TRC, and the City of Toronto. The TRC's 50-year franchise, signed in 1891, limiting it to operating only within the city boundaries that existed at that time. When Toronto annexed outlying communities such as Earls Court and Wychwood in the early 1900s, the TRC refused to extend service, insisting that its contract did not require it and that the new suburbs were profitable enough to justify any form of expansion. Fed up with the company's stubbornness, the city created the Toronto Civic Railway Company in 1911 to build public lines where the TRC wouldn't. The St. Clair line became one of its first, opening on August 25, 1913, and running between Yonge Street and Caledonia Road, where it was first to stop short of the Grand Trunk Railway tracks. By 1921, the transit's turf war finally came to an end. The Toronto Transportation Commission, an early version of today's TTC, took over the private Toronto Railway Company, and the city runs Toronto Civic Railway. With that, the St. Clair streetcar had officially become a part of one unified system. But even then, things didn't stay consistent for long. On December 6, 1921, the St. Clair route was cut back to Avenue Road, while the Avenue streetcar took over service at Caledonia Loop. Just a year and a half later, on July 1st, 1923, the St. Clair line restored all the way to Caledonia, and the Avenue route got renamed down Bay Street. Hence, the name changed to the Bay streetcar. Meanwhile, the TTC was gobbling up other lines too. On November 15, 1923, it absorbed the old Toronto Suburban Railway's Davenport line, and not long after, on January 1, 1924, the Dover Court streetcar was extended west Townsley Loop on Old Weston Road, bringing service even closer to what would later become Guns Loop. The original Davenport route from 1892, however, got cut back and faded into history a long time after that. As the West End kept growing, the TTC pushed its service even further. The first time its expansion came around in August 28, 1921, when Keele Loop, where the St. Clair streetcar would eventually terminate, appeared on TTC maps. I believe the loop was built around the time to serve as the western terminal for the Jane bus, marking one of the earliest examples of the TTC's loop system in this part of the city. The St. Clair streetcar itself kept inching westward. On October 29, 1931, it was extended to Townsend Loop, and just a few months later, on May 14, 1932, service finally reached Keele Loop, which would be actually around this area. For years, this would stand as the end of the line for the St. Clair streetcars. A few runs may have continued even farther up to the old Northern Loop near the city limits, but Keele remained the main terminus. I would also like to note, there's also a weird Bathurst stripper that started here. That started on St. Clair, went west on St. Clair to Bathurst, and went south from there. I couldn't find this stripper anywhere, and I don't feel like going down a rabbit hole. On October 6, 1947, the running lead bus was extended to Keele Loop, giving riders a convenient connection to streetcars. Around this same time, the Jane bus likely disappeared, possibly replaced by the Annette trolley bus, although records are scarce. After the 1940s, the Toronto streetcar network began to contract, with a lot of lines closing down, including the supplemental Earls Court streetcar that ran between Yonge and Earls Court Loop, being merged with St. Clair streetcar in 1978. But Keele Loop would survive, quietly serving the West End. Keele Loop was very simplistic. It has the same layout as the current Guns Loop, just much less amenities and decoration. Also, it was facing north, so rotate your head by 90 degrees. It was pretty much just concrete, asphalt, ballast, track, bus and streetcar poles, plus a very sketchy looking shelter. But Keele Loop would remain the terminus of the St. Clair streetcar for long, as in July 1981, Maybank Loop on Maybank Road was completed. Sources indicate that the 512 streetcar and the 71 Runnymede bus were rerouted here, although confusingly, the first official TEC map that showed that what we are now called Guns Loop didn't appear until April 1982, but everyone else says July 1981, but that may be wrong because they were citing incorrect sources that were citing other incorrect sources, and then the word circular large came up, and then I spent a good 4 hours trying to find it. I guess this is a rabbit hole for another time. There's no fanfare or ceremony for the opening of Maybank Loop. It simply just popped into service, quietly taking over the western end of the line. The loop looks almost identical to the former Keele Loop when it opened, being very simplistic, with the only exceptions being the loop facing west, some minor track layout differences, and a small service building for operators. A few years later, between January 1986 and January 1987, Maybank Loop was renamed the Guns Loop, reflecting the nearby street and its industrial routes. Fast forward to October 13th, 2019, if the 71 Runnymede bus was rerouted to Mount Dennis Garage, with Guns Loop's bus service being replaced by the 189 Stockcars bus. When it first opened in the year 1913, the St. Clair streetcar operated a dedicated right-of-way down the center of St. Clair Avenue, similar to today's 512 St. Clair route. However, between 1928 and 1945, this center lane was removed and replaced with paved tracks and open to mixed traffic. Over the decades, increasing road traffic began to degrade service reliability, making trips slow and unpredictable. Inspired by the success of the 510 Spadina's routes, dedicated lanes, and other portions of the network, the TC's reporters were restoring a dedicated right-of-way along St. Clair. The city determined the cost of building a new dedicated right-of-way would only be about $7 million more than simply replacing tracks, and the street itself was wide enough to accommodate them without significantly narrowing the vehicle lanes. Toronto City Council passed the proposal in 2004, with construction beginning in September 25, 2005. The project was completed in 3 stages. St. Clair to Vaughan Road opened on February 18, 2007. Then, the extension Lansdowne Avenue opened on December 20, 2009, and then full service to Guns Loop began on June 30, 2010. A pre-opening event on December 19, 2009 celebrated the new Lansdowne section using the TTC's 2 remaining PCC streetcars. The completion of the right-of-way not only improved travel speed, accessibility, and reliability, but also provided the perfect opportunity to renovate Guns Loop. This renovation brings us to today. Today, Guns Loop is a modest yet thoughtfully designed transit hub. It has 1 bus loop for the 189 Stockcar bus that passes through, and 1 streetcar loop for the 512 St. Clair. The paving is eye-catching, with striped black and white design reminiscences of St. Clair West's station tiling. The bus platform itself is larger than a typical sidewalk stop, featuring a standard shelter, a bus pole, some garbage bins, some shade trees, and the bike locks. There's even a small brick building to the side for TTC operators to use the washroom. There are 2 paths that extend from Loop. Both leads to crossings that access the streetcar platforms. One path continues along a curvy track towards Tarragona Boulevard, lined with bike locks and the same striped paving, while a straighter sidewalk has been added over time where pedestrians carve a desired path. You might even spot a new desired path for me. Yes, I like street design. Next question. Between the streetcar and the bus platforms, the landscaping is pleasantly green, with patches of grass filling the open space. The streetcar tracks are edged with cobblestone, and the side touch and initially light posts spotted blue. The streetcar platforms themselves are consistent with others along St. Clair. Angled roofs, metal tube supports arranged in triangles, wooden inlays, and glass walls. The TDC has unfortunately added anti-homeless metal benches, which are impossible to sit on, poles, trash bins, maps, and a fossil history panel detailing local industries like the meat packing district and the Campbell Maple Leaf Flour Mill along Junction Road. For something you may miss, there's public art on the southwest corner of the loop, located next to the intersection. A rusty metal panel with poetry by Rishma Dunlop, reflecting an urban life mounted on a small curved concrete retaining wall, with a gentle berm facing the bus platform. A nearby sign identifies the St. Clair West Village area, anchoring the loop within its community. Overall, Guns Loop is a very nice streetcar and bus terminal, and something that could serve as a model for future LRT projects. From the street design perspective, it's well done. Although if I were nitpicking, a few more bike lots and perhaps a CDC style phone like the one they have on the Long Branch would hurt. A few fun quirks about the Guns Loop. Despite it being the official terminus for the 512 streetcar, signs on the streetcars themselves still show Keele as the terminus. a little fun tidbit to keep the foamers busy. And for the name, Guns Loop takes its title from the nearby Guns Road, which itself was named after Guns Limited, a West Toronto abattoir founded by a businessman named Donald Gunn from Beaverton, Ontario. Wait, what's an abattoir? Oh!
Ah, I see.
A few moments later.
But the story of Guns Loop does end here. Plans on the drawing board suggest that the 512 train streetcar could one day be extended even further west, potentially all the way out to Jane Street to link up with higher order transit, or perhaps out to Runnymede Loop or even Scarlet Road. Meanwhile, St. Clair and Weston Go, which is planned to be located right here, is slated to open for the F Express and Go Transit's kitchen line, complete with a brand new bus loop to serve commuters. If these plans come to fruition, Guns Loop could find itself largely redundant. Streetcars would continue past the loop, only using it for short turns, and bus services would likely shift to St. Clair West and Go, which would become the more logical transit hub for this area. As for now, there's no official TDC timeline or confirmed funding for the 512 extension. It exists only in the transit stage proposals. For the foamers and transitors alike, it's a glimpse into a possible future where Guns Loop quietly fades from prominence. A once vital terminus is now overshadowed by bigger, more connected hubs. So here we are, standing at Guns Loop, a modest little terminus that tells a story stretching back over a century. From the Davenport streetcars to Keel Loop, from the Runnymede buses to modern TPCC-era renovations, is a small corner of Toronto, tucked beside industrial streets and shaded by a few trees. Yet, it reflects the city's ever-evolving transit landscape. Whether Guns Loop remains a key hub or becomes a quiet footnote once the St. Clair streetcar pushes further west, its history and quirks like the Keel terminus signs and the abattoir origins will always leave a mark on Toronto transit lore. For now, it's more than just a loop. It's a reminder that even the smallest stops have stories worth telling. Thank you for watching.